I love doing a good job at each stage. And I think that's really the way I want to live life as well. That if I live each day well, it adds up into a life well led.
You're listening to Parallax from Radcliffe Cardiology in association with makeadent.org. Here is your host, Ankur and Carolyn, MD.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Parallax. So I have a really special guest and someone I've been wanting to host for a while. Probably she doesn't know about this, but she's been on my list of guests that I want to host for Parallax. And I ended up writing to her, and much to my surprise, she responded within 15 minutes and not even half an hour. And the energies were so synergistic that here we are recording this episode. So my guest on today's show is someone who I think needs no introduction. She's Dr. Carolyn Lam. She's a heart failure cardiologist. She's a professor of medicine at Duke National University of Singapore. And we've all heard her. She co-hosts the world famous podcast for Circulation on the Run. And I believe now has an exciting role with Us2 AI, which she's going to talk about more on this episode. So with that introduction, Carolyn, welcome on the show. And thank you so much for doing this for us.
Oh, thank you so much, Ankur. I mean, you're saying you were thrilled when I responded. You should have seen my response when I got your email. I think what you're doing here with Parallax Podcast is amazing. I did mention that you've got some of the people I most admire already interviewed, and Deepak Bhatt, Nancy Elbert, Ami Bhatt. I mean, I'm very, very grateful to have a chance to share my story as well.
Yeah, no, and we're equally excited to have you on the show, and you were obviously your work with Circulation on the Run, and some of the research that you've done with heart failure, and just your persona and your presence in the cardiology space is very welcoming and refreshing and very inspirational to a lot of cardiologists, let alone women, but just cardiologists in general, including myself. So I'm sort of having a fan moment as I interview you. So I'm going to start by asking you about, origins for you for medicine, and then cardiovascular disease, and then heart failure, obviously. But tell us about your childhood and, early adulthood or teenage years as you were thinking about a career.
Well, it's actually quite simple. I was born and bred in Singapore. And in case anybody's wondering, Singapore is a tiny island city nation at the sort of the southern end of the Malaysian peninsula, deep in Southeast Asia. And Ankur, I think you, if anyone, would identify with that from really having roots in Asia. I know that you began your life in India, and I'm so grateful to know you've been to Singapore. But it's a really, really tiny island, and I am the daughter of a very successful pediatrician. That's my mom, and a scientist and emeritus professor in zoology. Can you beat that? In my dad. And I suppose I've somehow married their careers in my life by becoming a clinician scientist. However, being a doctor was something I think has always been part of the fiber of who I am. To this day, I still consider it one of our greatest privileges that we can touch people's lives at this very, very core need. It's interesting. I was just sharing with a stranger today of how in the clinic, how when someone walks in with a physical need or an illness, it doesn't matter if they're royalty. It doesn't matter if they're the poorest of the poor or the richest of the rich. The basic human need is there, and it is such a privilege to be able to help someone at that point. So I remain very, very much grateful to be able to practice medicine. And the science part, I think, came as sort of we got to be creative somewhere. And here we go. Now, going into heart failure, though, it's a whole story in itself, because when I started out, frankly, I was so enamored with the condition of what we then called diastolic heart failure. But I literally got warned by mentors and people around me, sort of saying, why are you studying a disease that doesn't exist? Why are you trying to be the fever doc of cardiology? You know, like totally unglamorous. Why don't you go train to be an interventionist? Why don't you, you know, do any other thing like imaging? And I remember really, really feeling self-doubt at that moment and wondering if passion is enough to carry you through. And I have to say that now, having the great privilege of looking back and in my lifetime seeing that we've got the first resoundingly positive outcomes trial in HFpEF, which we now call it. I mean, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that I went on this path and stuck to it.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, I think first of all, congratulations for taking the path of the clinician scientist. It's personally been very fulfilling to me. And, I think for you, perhaps it came a bit more naturally. It came to me by accident, but it was a great accident because, it's given me a lot of purpose, and it's given, I mean, not that, by no means am I saying that people who only pursue a clinical path do not have meaning and purpose in their lives. That's not the message that I'm trying to give. But I think to some of us, who have that creative energy in them, I think it's a good forum to dissipate that energy through science and through creation in science and innovation in science. And where I'm getting with this is that perhaps it came to you naturally because you had a scientist in your father and a clinician in your mother, and you sort of imbibed the good of the good aspects from both of them, and both of their jobs. I mean, there's obviously a mundane component to every job, but then there's the exciting component to every job as well. And I do think that the path of a clinician scientist is a very exciting one. Obviously with challenges, but it's exciting.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, Ankur, to you as well, congratulations on being a pioneer in many of the things, this podcast being case in point, But yeah, I still look for that characteristic when I have sort of people who want to train with me or join as a clinician scientist. I still look for that insatiable desire to be creative, to write, the sort of thing that makes you do the research even when you have to do it after a full day of clinics, which is how I started, right? You don't get any sort of discount on your clinical work. You just have to be so driven that you want to do your research at nights or, in the weekends. I mean, I still remember when I was in Singapore and I was trying to get involved and I attached myself to a scientist, a mentor, and I literally sometimes still have nightmares of the nights I would go into the lab and have to pick up these mice and rats and inject them, right, with intraperitoneal, whatever it is I was testing. Oh boy, yeah, but it's that sort of thing, I think, that it kind of keeps you going, and I think that even doing podcasts, both you and I, it's part of that extension of being inquisitive, and it's really fun at the end.
Yeah, no, I again, well said, and I mean, we're not trying to advocate for work-life imbalance. I mean, you obviously, you have to be, you just have to be. It has to, like you said, I think the word is spark, and I think it's also insatiable, so that when you partake in an activity, after a full days of clinic, like for me, sitting down at night by myself, whether I'm writing poetry or whether I'm writing a thoughtful piece for, maybe a drama piece of my mind or, reflections, it gives me immense joy to do that. For example, sitting down, winding down at the end of a Monday to do this podcast with you is my joy. And, my why is that these conversations that are being listened to at different parts of the world are going to ignite the next Carolyn Lam, right? And so that's going to be my contribution to science, that, okay, if I'm not Carolyn Lam myself, I'm going to help someone become the next Carolyn Lam through the conversations that I'm having with the Carolyn Lam that we all know. So,
you're too kind. I have to add the next Ankur Kalra too. Hey.
Wow. Thank you for that. But the point is, and to your point is that you do some, it's innate. So like creativity, if it gives you joy.
Exactly. Ankur, could I bring up something though? I've been questioning recently this concept of balance. And I've been striving for balance so much in my life that I'm now starting to wonder, is it really balance that I want, or is it passion and ups and downs? Dude, I don't know if you know what I'm trying to say here, because sometimes when I keep talking about having balance, it just feels like everything is not done to the fullest. And now I think I've begun to have a little bit more compassion on myself and to just go, sometimes to do the stuff I want to do, I'm just going to be fully passionate, and I'm going to just say I'm fully passionate and be off balance now and then, but always to be joyful and to be guided and have integrity with who I am, and that's what I hope to be. It's like the other concept of multitasking. How when I'm younger, I used to think, wow, that's my gift. And then after a while started realizing, wow, that's my weakness. And it's actually way better that I get focused and do one thing at a time than to spread myself thin. It's just these things. I know I sound old, but just thought I'd put it out there.
No, you're so on point. And, this is, just be receptive of when others bring up work-life balance, because I know that's been talked about a lot. But, and, when people ask me, and this is to your point of multitasking, and, when people ask me, oh, so you wrote a poetry book and you do the podcast and you have all these papers and you're active on social media and you are an interventionalist and, how are you doing all these things? You must be really good at multitasking. And, my response to that has been actually no. I am really good at unitasking. And that is that when I am doing a particular task, I want 100% of my energy in that task, because that's when immersion happens, and that's when I'm able to produce my best product, and I'm fully present in that moment, and that's when life happens, right? Life happens not when you are ruminating over the past or you are worried about the future. It's when you are here and now and you're present and you have given every molecule of yourself to that moment.
I absolutely love that. I really love that. And if I could also say that extends to everything we do. I realized that in my clinic, if I would just, in the first minute, literally just 1 minute of a patient encounter, not be looking at case notes or the computer or fluffing about anything else, but just look the patient straight in the eye and say, how can I help you? And just be so fully engaged in that 1 minute, it actually makes me far more efficient. Because at the end, the patient says exactly what they need, and then I deal with it, right? I do go on the computer and everything, but then I don't have them continually sort of trying to say, oh, and about this and about that while I'm trying to do something or something else, I've just found again and again that 1 minute saves me 10 minutes of the entire clinical encounter. Same with kids. My son could be tugging at me for the entire hour. And if I would just turn and give him 5 minutes, right? Just face to face and go, yes, Kwan, what can mommy do for you? And then you just see he's so happy and and honestly, he suddenly goes, okay, I'm okay now. And he trots away. You know what I mean? Rather than me sort of continually trying to multitask with whatever it is I'm doing on the computer and him trying to get my attention. Yeah, it's just, I think it applies to everything.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. And, I think it's just about, it's not about the quantity, right? It's about the quality. So if that 1 minute is a quality 1 minute where you are completely immersed in that patient story, or that 5 minutes are the quality 5 minutes where you have nothing else in your mind but just your son and his questions and what he wants, then even for him, whether it's your son or your patient, I think their perception of you being fully present will be an experience for them as well, right? It will be like, mom was with me, even though you were with him for 5 minutes. You'll be like, oh, she was with me for longer. That'll be the perception.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah, and I've sort of come to realize that also, as I've gone through the years, and that this is the mantra, is to be fully present and to be here and now and to be fully immersive and to be passionate, like you said. But also just allow yourself the complete immersion to be in that moment, and you'll live a fuller life. I mean, you'll obviously do more fulfilling work, so you'll be more fulfilled. You may be imbalanced, but you'll be fulfilled rather than being.
Yeah, indeed.
No, this is great, absolutely, and we're talking spirituality, which obviously is my favorite topic, obviously, but moving forward, so you decide to become a heart failure cardiologist, and tell us when did circulation on the run happen? How did circulation on the run happen for you? Because I think for me, that was my first introduction to you. And it could be true for many of us, right? Like to know about the Carolyn Lam we know about today, like circulation on the run was what introduced me to you. But that could be true for a lot of the cardiologists who now know you. But tell us about how that happened.
Wow. Since you brought up spirituality, I hope that I can have the liberty to share that part of me, which is, I think, frankly, the most important part of me. And when I look back and sort of ask, how did I get here? I know that there is a higher being. I know that it's just impossible for me to plan the way to get to something like hosting the podcast of circulation without, frankly, a good God guiding the way. So I'll tell you, it's just so strange. I just really put my heart and soul into diastolic heart failure, which became HFpEF, became a trialist somehow when I met Scott Solomon, frankly, at the Brigham, and fell in love with the way trials run. Went back to Singapore after my US training and started off some Asian cohorts. And from there, just by one step at a time, recognizing opportunities, giving my heart and soul each time, became known in the academic circles. The other thing for younger listeners, I was so fortunate to be asked to review papers for journals such as JACC because some wonderful people like Barry Greenberg met me in a heart failure training camp and believed in me. So he gave me the opportunity to review. Every single thing I did, I gave my best. And because of that, you start being recognized as a reviewer. Suddenly you're an editorialist. And then my academic profile was building up. And that is, by the way, the foundation of first becoming an associate editor of a journal like Circulation. And so somehow stars aligned that I had that academic credibility to become an associate editor. And I'm grateful that in one of my journeys, I had crossed paths with Darren McGuire in an advisory board. And Darren McGuire is a senior editor of Circulation. And when it came that they were building their team, he kind of said, well, you know, we want to be international. Have you heard of this lady in Singapore, you know? Like, who knew, right? And it's just that. It just, one person knew another person, and that's how I got invited to join Circulation as an associate editor. However, how I did the podcast is another just incredulous story. So in Singapore, somehow I ended up on a radio show one day talking, I think, about heart failure. I can't remember. But then I really got along with the DJ who was hosting it, and who knew he was about to start a TV show. And he kind of said, hey, come on in and interview for the TV show. I'd like you to be my physician host, right? And it's sort of a weekly TV show. It's it's sort of for public education, just to talk about things like chest pain and coughs and, you know, just to break it down and give our Singaporean audience a really reliable source of medical information. Who knew I got the role? And so all this while I was building a career in medicine, I was also getting a lot of experience in speaking because I ended up being the physician on this show for 10 seasons. 10 seasons of 10 episodes. So you can imagine after a while, you sort of pick up all the little things that make you remember and how to articulate and your points and things like that. So by the time Circulation was thinking of doing a podcast, I think some bird must have told Joe Hill that, well, Carolyn has a little bit of experience. And he just gave me a call and said, hey, we want to do a podcast. Do you think you can do it? And I just, with all my heart, said yes, not even knowing what I was doing or how I was going to do it. But I knew that, this would be so cool. And the very first episode of Circulation on the Run, if you listen, I told the story of how I thought Circulation on the Run would be a good idea, because literally I would be on the run on a treadmill in the mornings, wishing that I could read a journal at the same time, but there's just no way. And so wishing that someone would summarize it audibly for me. And so I decided I'm going to do that in the podcast for others. And that's how it humbly started. And by the way, here's a sneak peek behind the scenes too. That first episode, we had to record twice. And it's not my fault. It's because someone didn't turn on their recorder. We do it the old-fashioned way. We each have a recorder. And so that was funny. That's an inside joke. But if that person is listening, he'll know. It's one of the people who've been a guest on your podcast, by the way.
Oh, wow. Wow, that is a neat little fact. But, you know, I think coming back to, you know, how you initially started answering this question, and you know, thank you for answering it that way and saying that, because, you know, I'm a huge believer in spirituality and, you know, circumstances lining up and things happening for a reason, and life happening for us and not to us, and, you know, looking back, be able to connect the dots, and certainly that there's a higher force that is directing us to where we are meant to be our fullest self in immersing ourselves in the service of others. Because, you know, I think that is, like, I think all of us are here to serve in one way or the other. And you know, here's how I think, just putting on my spiritual hat, is that the purpose of your life is to find your gift, and the meaning of your life is to give that gift away. I think that's what gives your life meaning, and your purpose is find the gift. But once you found it, what will give your life meaning is to give it away. Because we're only here each for a certain time point, and then we'll be gone, and then someone else will be here. But that is just such a fascinating story, about how the dots lined up for you and how the universe was preparing you for a portion of your career in speaking, and introducing you to the world audience through Circulation on the Run, which continues to do superbly well.
Well, it's very kind, and could I please respond? That is a quotable quote, Ankur. Have you published what you just said? It's so purpose of your life is to find your gift, and then the meaning is to give that away. That is so beautiful, and that's where happiness really lies, don't you think?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I think happiness is nothing but service, and you will be, you'll have that joy, and that joy will happen. It's something that you'll experience. It's hard to put it into words, but you experience joy when you're happy, and you are happy when you're giving, because as long as you're taking, you'll be, maybe you're elated, but that's going to be very short term. It's not going to be long lasting. But I think long lasting joy or happiness is only when you're giving it away constantly.
Wow. Even the timing of talking to you like this is serendipitous, because I have to admit that through life there are moments where when you see people who don't believe the same way sort of seem to succeed in life, sometimes it gets quite discouraging, and I think one just has to hold on to one's belief. It's not easy in the midst of not understanding how the dots aligned. That's what faith is.
Absolutely.
Faith is just still believing because it's true, and it just always works out, and life just shows you that again and again. And just whoever's listening here who needs to hear it, never give up. Keep looking up. Don't give up. Look up.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think faith, and for people who believe in the mechanism of faith, and it's funny that here we're two physician scientists talking about faith, but I do sincerely, in all honesty, believe that spirituality begins where science ends. And I think that, and I've experienced it, in my life, and I've had moments where I've just had to let go and just have faith take over. And things have fallen back into place. That has happened to me time and time again. And it's something that unless you experience it, it's hard for you to quote unquote prove it. For the scientists who only believe in proving in experiments. And my goal actually, as an investigator, putting on the investigator hat, is to somehow scientifically deduce that spirituality has the power to transform, and that it actually exists, that faith. And I'm slowly building that aspect of my portfolio up. Like I've written a few pieces for the European Heart Journal. I mean, on spirituality, medicine, and I've written on taking lessons from the Bhagavad Gita. Wrote about COVID-19 and healthcare workers, taking lessons from the Bhagavad Gita, as we speak, I'm working on a piece which we're most likely going to send to Jack, but we'll see how that's perceived. Because the spirituality piece, which was initially sent to Jack, was eventually accepted by the European Heart Journal. So, but the point is that I couldn't agree with you more. That faith again is something that you have to experience and believe in, and for those who believe in faith, the faith will test your belief. Just like a true scientist will test how good the experiment is. Faith, being the ultimate scientist, will test how much you believe in the faith system, and if you do, then it'll show you that it is indeed the right system to believe in. That's how at least I believe.
I love the way you articulated all of that. If I could add to that tension of science, medicine, and faith, in my personal life, I've experienced for sure faith is real. In clinical care, I've also seen for myself things that science and medicine cannot explain. You see for yourself miracles. But if I could also tell you about another struggle I have, is now that I'm a entrepreneur, albeit an accidental entrepreneur, as a co-founder of a company, how to also bring in spirituality there, because I really don't think it's something that you keep in silos, and to put it all into integrity, and to make sure that while I'm running a business, it's still the medical doctor in me who has the patient at the center. While it's dollars and hard facts, there's still an element of faith that things line up beyond your comprehension. The humility to admit that no matter what I do, I still need that, and all of that. I mean, it's interesting.
Yeah, and also, that I truly believe that true magic happens when your why is centered on the most acute need that the planet has. And this is just talking from a faith-based perspective, is that if you are trying to address the why, which the planet most acutely needs, be it climate change, or be it global warming, or be it air pollution and cardiovascular disease, or be it, in the US, for example, gun control, or, be it the next frontier in cardiovascular care, whether that's ischemia reperfusion injury or finding a therapeutic armamentarium for HFpEF. I think if your why is truly centered in the next big problem that the planet is facing, and you are in all your heart focused on finding that solution, and not worried about the failure or the glamour, and those are just relative terms, then universe is going to line up all the forces to help you. And I've seen that happen to other people, and I've sort of seen that systematically happen to people who have their why figured out, in that it's their why is bigger than themselves individually.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
And I think in doing that, I think obviously you'll shine as an individual also, but that is going to be a byproduct, and your mission, your why, is going to be larger than your own life.
Yes.
Which I think is a great segue to talk about your entrepreneurial hat with us to AI. Tell us about that.
Oh, moving from such big, important things of the universe to talk of this very specific issue feels a little bit, maybe not as impactful, but I will tell you the story. And I think it's part of me having the privilege to be part of the guideline writing committee of the ESC 2021 heart failure guidelines, and sort of telling everyone that when we diagnose heart failure, We need to have echocardiography and biomarkers, namely natriuretic peptides, and recognize this and that in the echo, and then realizing GPs can't get their hands on echoes. There are waiting lists longer than a year in some places in the world for echo. Does that mean that none of these patients can get diagnosed? And I just realized then that what I've been training years to do, which is echocardiography, I trained in echo at Mayo Clinic. Actually, a lot of what I do is very mundane. It's very manual. It's trainable. And if so, it should be automated. And that's just the whole thing of what the software does. It literally just applies image recognition and AI to automate what we do, which is recognize which chamber of the heart we're looking at, do segmentation, make automatic measurements, and then just decide if that's normal or not. But I do think that that's the first step that we have to take in order to democratize the tool. So the analogy is like with the ECG, the electrocardiogram or the EKG. There was a day when we had to go to cardiologists to get an EKG. I don't think you're old enough, but I trained in those days where we had metal calipers in our clinic jackets. We'd have to take them out to measure all the intervals on the EKG and decide whether what was normal or not. We memorized all the criteria for LVH and all these other things. And then now it's automated. AI reads it, spits out stuff in English. It's normal or it's not. Consider LVH, etc. And because of that, we can actually get an EKG at a general practitioner's. I really think that we're there with echo or ultrasound of the heart now, that if we start to make the interpretation automated, simpler, and hopefully just a simple, at least normal or not, screening tool can now be in the hands of many people. Who knows? Maybe as with the ECG on an Apple Watch on anyone's wrist right now, maybe it could be something that people could use to do a medical selfie in future, and we would never miss another diagnosis of dilated cardiomyopathy or regional wall motion abnormality that indicates you've got myocardial coronary artery disease, about to manifest, things like that. So that's the passion. And we founded the company in 2017 and now have regulatory approval in most parts of the world. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing, humbling and amazing journey.
Yeah. So, again, it's if the intention is to solve a problem, which was, provide a tool at the fingertips of the general practitioner's office to be able to get an echocardiogram, then the universe is going to line up all the resources for you to manifest. And that's exactly what's happened with us to AI. And again, you're trying to solve a why, which is an important why to solve. So congratulations on that and the success of us to AI. And where do you see the future steps for us to AI? Where do you see this go?
Yeah, very grounded, logical, high quality steps of, we've already validated the software in the, if I may, one of the best echo core labs in the whole world, Scott Sullivan's core lab at the Brigham. Now we're expanding into valve disease and different types of cardiomyopathy. We're performing implementation trials, international ones. I'm really excited about them, where we'll be putting the tool into the hands of general practitioners, novice nurses, even going out into the general community to screen hearts and to look for example, heart failure and HFpEF, a diagnosis that's always missed, and to allow treatment. So it's really nice that even that ties into my passion for HFpEF, and it's as I said, these things, one didn't plan ahead of time, but they did line up, and I'm on my knees grateful for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think what is also exciting, or could be exciting, and I'm sure you're headed in that direction because you mentioned valve disease, is, extrapolating the calibration and automation into looking at picking up rheumatic heart disease in, Africa and Asia, because, it still is, very rampant and right in center of clinical practice for many of our colleagues in that part of the world. And, with the advent of transcatheter therapies, particularly for pregnant women, if we can pick these early and if we can diagnose them early, then, at least for them to have a safe pregnancy and delivery would be paramount.
Oh, you're reading my mind. Absolutely. We're not there yet, but that's definitely on the roadmap. Yeah, I'm very much excited about the future, and but it's still one humble step at a time, and really making sure that we remain grounded even as we shoot for the moon. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Everything always happens a step at a time, and there's no shortcuts to be taken. Um, we, I I love doing a good job at each stage. And I think that's really the way I want to live life as well. That if I live each day well, it adds up into a life well led, you know? Um, yeah.
Absolutely. And, just because this has had a spiritual theme and, just taking lessons from the Bhagavad Gita is, if I'm going to just translate what you said to a spiritual language, but it means exactly what you said. And that is that if you focus on the action and, let the chips fall wherever they're going to fall, because you're not obligated to the results of our actions. You're only obligated to action itself. And if you can take joy in performing the action itself and focusing on the action itself and let the chips fall wherever they're going to fall, then you're going to keep being immersed and keep being joyful for whatever you do. And for that for you is just enjoying the process as much as you do the fruit or the end product. So, this has been just a fascinating conversation.
Oh, it has. My goodness. I've really learned so much from you, Ankur. I'm so looking forward to read the papers that you're saying you are writing now, and just thank you for doing this for our community. It's a very special space that you've got, by the way. It is your gift. I can hear it oozing out even from just the voice.
Yeah, no, thank you
That's
for that.
awesome.
It's, I mean, I did I stumble upon this maybe because I was feeling a lack of that connection. And, when I started going back to the ancient scriptures and reading more about the Bhagavad Gita and the Stoic philosophy and some of the ancient principles of how to live a meaningful life. And sort of then I just wanted to share that with my colleagues in medicine because my perception was in my day-to-day work and communication and interacting with a lot of our colleagues is that that insight is lacking. And I think in the race and the competitiveness and the rut of the next frontier in medicine or cardiovascular medicine, whether it's in research or in clinical breakthroughs, we sort of forget our why. Um, and I think it's so important to recenter, focus on the why, and just be more aligned with the overall mission. That I started delving into the space, and then whatever I processed, I thought I should start writing because there was so much that I was processing in medicine terms and how we could apply this in medicine with how we deal with each other as colleagues or how we deal with our patients. That I thought that people will. My hope was that through these writings, people will derive more meaning in their day-to-day work as physicians or clinicians, or even their interactions with their colleagues, which is really my purpose. My purpose to share is for colleagues to have to possess a similar meaning and passion in their lives, and my reasoning is that if you actually can tap that space in your soul, that you will never face burnout. So it taps into a bigger meaning, bigger meaning being, why is burnout affecting so many of us? It's it's such a long road to become a physician, and then to lose your drive and your spark and your meaning to burnout is dampening. Like, it shouldn't happen. So, my hope is that through these messages and conversations and writings, that I could, rekindle that meaning for each one of us. Because I know that each one of us, there's a Superman in each one of us, and there's an inherent gift in each one of us, and all we need to do is to identify that gift, and then the world will be a better place.
Wow. Ankur, if I could reflect to you, you are, through your writings, through this, you are giving your gift away. That's so cool. Well, thank you. This is so inspiring. Thank you.
No, thank you. If that's the perception, I'm grateful that, I have that perception, but that meant a lot to me. Any closing remarks for Parallax and for cardiology, or for anyone who's listening?
I think once again, I'm truly humbled and privileged to have had this opportunity to share a bit. I especially want to speak to, I hate to keep harping on female, but because there are just still so many gender disparities out there, just my younger sisters in the same boat, I feel for you. Keep looking up. Please never give up. And, living each day authentically, you will get there. Just keep at it. Thanks.
Yeah, no, beautiful message. Thank you for sharing. And to anyone who's listening, feel free to send in your feedback to us. I actually read every single one of your messages, and whether it's on social media or through channels like Spotify, SoundCloud, or Apple Podcasts. And, if you want us to get other guests like Dr. Lam on the show, just feel free to send us a note, and we'll do our best to get them on the show for you. Thanks again for listening.
We hope you enjoyed today's podcast, produced by Radcliffe Cardiology in association with makeadent.org. We aim to bring you a new angle of all things cardiology every second week. Review us on your favourite podcast app, or send your comments or questions to podcast@radcliffe-group.com. To view the series, head to radcliffecardiology.com/podcasts/Parallax. Thanks for listening.